No healer could calm the Alpha King's dying wolf, until rejected Omega touched him, and he claimed her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Lina had always been the one to remain in the shadows, never fully accepted by her pack. As a rejected Omega, she often found herself overlooked and cast aside, never a priority in the eyes of the other wolves. The pack didn't understand her, and she felt the sting of their judgment every day. Despite her heart of gold and her willingness to help others, Lina was constantly reminded of her perceived weakness. She was different from the others in ways she couldn't explain. But one day, when she ventured into the forest to escape the cruelty of her pack, everything changed. It was there, in the dense trees, that she found a wolf, its fur matted with blood, its body lying motionless under the pale moonlight. This wasn't just any wolf. This was a creature far more powerful than anything she had ever seen. At first, Lina hesitated. She was just an Omega, incapable of shifting into the powerful wolves the pack admired. But her instincts told her to help. As she knelt beside the injured wolf, she couldn't help but notice the odd feeling in the air, a strange energy that pulsed around her, connecting her to the dying creature. With gentle hands, she began to tend to its wounds, her heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. The wolf let out a low whimper as her fingers brushed against its fur, and for the first time, Lina felt a connection, something deeper than she could comprehend. She didn't know it yet, but the wolf she was helping wasn't just any creature. It was the Alpha King, Kalen, in his most vulnerable state. He had been cursed, his wolf dying from the effects of a dark magic that no healer had been able to cure. His people had given up hope, but Kalen knew deep down that there was something special about the Omega tending to him. What he didn't expect was that this encounter would change everything. As Lina carefully continued to heal the wolf, she felt a strange warmth spread through her. Her hands began to glow, and she knew in that moment that something miraculous was happening. It was as though her touch was restoring life to the creature before her, and with each passing second, the bond between them deepened. Kalen, still in his wolf form, watched from the shadows, silently observing the Omega who had dared to touch him. He could feel the energy flowing from her, and it stirred something within him. The curse that had tormented him for so long began to lift, and for the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. Lina's presence had done what no healer could. She had touched him, not just physically, but spiritually. Unbeknownst to her, she had awakened something powerful in the Alpha King, something that would forever change their destinies. As the wolf's wounds slowly began to heal, Kalen's human form began to materialize, standing before Lina as a towering figure. The moment their eyes met, there was no going back. Lina had no idea who he was, but Kalen knew. He knew that she was his fated mate, the one who would save him and claim his heart. With his body fully healed, Kalen stepped forward and gently took Lina's hand in his. He didn't need to speak the words yet. She would know soon enough. And as the moonlight bathed them both in its ethereal glow, Kalen's voice, deep and commanding, broke the silence. "You are mine now." Lina's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit her. Everything she had ever known was about to change. The Alpha King had claimed her, and nothing would ever be the same again. As Lina stood there, her hands still clasped in Kalen's, a whirlwind of emotions crashed over her. She had always been the one left behind, the one everyone overlooked. Yet here she was, standing before the Alpha King himself, who had just revealed his true identity. Her mind raced as she tried to process what was happening. She had touched a dying wolf, a creature that no one else could heal, and now, in return for her kindness, she had somehow become the Alpha King's mate. The very thought felt like a dream, something too surreal to believe. Kalen, noticing her stunned silence, gently cupped her face with his free hand, his touch sending a surge of warmth through her body. "You saved me," he said softly, his voice low and filled with an emotion she couldn't quite place. "I owe you everything." Lina's heart fluttered at his words, but confusion still clouded her thoughts. How is this possible? She whispered, barely able to speak. Kalen's eyes softened as he looked at her, his grip on her hand tightening ever so slightly. It was the bond. The moment you touched me, something awakened within me. You are not just any Omega, Lina. You are my fated mate. Lina's head spun at the words he spoke. She had heard stories of fated mates, but she never thought they could apply to her. She was an Omega, weak and unwanted by her own pack. Yet, here she was, standing before the most powerful wolf in the kingdom, being told that she was his. But I'm just a rejected Omega, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would you choose me? Kalen's expression hardened, his gaze intense. Because you are exactly what I need. You are the one who saved me, not just physically, but in ways I can't even begin to explain. Your heart, your strength, your kindness. These are things I have never found in anyone else. And now, I can't imagine a world without you. His words were like a balm to her wounded soul. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. No one had ever made her feel like she mattered. And yet, here he was, a king, standing before her, offering her everything. I don't know if I'm strong enough to be your Luna, she said quietly, fear creeping into her voice. Kalen's lips curled into a small smile, a look of affection in his eyes. You don't have to be strong in the way others expect. You've already shown me more strength than anyone else ever could. His words made Lina's heart swell, but she still felt uncertain. The weight of the situation was overwhelming. She had been living her life in the shadows, and now she was being thrust into the light, into a life she had never imagined. Kalen seemed to sense her hesitation. I know this is a lot to take in, he said gently, his voice softening. But I need you, Lina. I need you by my side. His words rang in her ears, and a strange warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she felt seen. For the first time, she felt like she mattered. The bond between them had been forged in the most unlikely of circumstances, but Lina couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. The way he looked at her, the way he spoke to her, it was as if she had always been meant for him, and he for her. I don't understand everything, she said finally, her voice trembling. But I know that I want to be with you. Kalen's expression softened, his eyes glowing with pride. Then you are mine, Lina, and I am yours. In that moment, everything else seemed to fade away. The doubts, the fears, the past. All of it was nothing compared to the future that lay before them. Kalen took her hand again, this time with a firm and confident grip, and began to lead her toward the clearing. Come with me, Lina, he said, his voice filled with determination. We have a kingdom to save. Lina nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She was no longer the rejected Omega. She was the Alpha King's mate, and together, they would face whatever came their way. As Lina walked alongside Kalen, the weight of the moment finally began to settle into her chest. The Alpha King had claimed her, not just as his mate, but as his equal, and the enormity of that responsibility was overwhelming. She had never thought herself worthy of such a role, but now, with Kalen by her side, she began to question everything she had ever believed about herself. The forest around them was silent, the air thick with anticipation as they made their way back toward the heart of Kalen's kingdom. Every step she took felt like a step into a new world, one that was unfamiliar yet somehow welcoming. Kalen had already begun to speak of the challenges they would face together. The curse that has plagued me, he said, his voice steady but tinged with regret, has not only affected my wolf, but it has also weakened my people. The pack has lost hope, and with that, so has the kingdom. But you, Lina, you have done something no one else could. You have brought me back. Lina's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected to be the one to save anyone, let alone the most powerful alpha in the land. She had simply acted on instinct, driven by a need to help, and yet, here she was, standing next to him as his mate. I don't understand, she admitted, her voice shaky. How did I do it? How did I heal you? Kalen looked at her, his gaze intense and full of admiration. It was you, Lina, he said softly. Your kindness, your purity, your heart. You are more powerful than you realize. You healed me not just with your hands, but with your soul. Lina swallowed hard, trying to digest his words. She had never seen herself as powerful, but Kalen's words struck a chord deep within her. She had always been told she was weak, But here she was, standing beside a king, someone who saw her as more than just an Omega. As they neared the edge of the forest, the first hints of dawn began to peek through the trees, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Kalen led her toward the heart of his kingdom, a place where the ancient stone walls of the castle loomed ahead, their majestic silhouette casting a shadow over the land. It was here that Lina's true journey would begin, a journey that would change not only her life, but the fate of the entire kingdom. You are no longer just an Omega, Kalen continued, his voice soft yet full of conviction. You are the future of this kingdom, Lina. You are my Luna, and together, we will restore hope to my people. Lina felt a mixture of fear and excitement stir within her. She had never imagined a life like this, never thought she would have the chance to make a real difference. But now, as she stood by Kalen's side, she realized that anything was possible. The Alpha King's confidence in her made her feel stronger, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future where she was not just the rejected Omega but a force to be reckoned with. As they entered the castle, the weight of the task ahead became clear. The halls were filled with whispers, eyes watching her every move, unsure of her place in this new world. Lina could feel the tension in the air, the unease of those who had once looked down on her. But Kalen was there, standing tall beside her, his presence unwavering. Let them watch, he said, his voice steady. They will learn that you are not just my mate, but my equal. You will have a place here, and you will be respected. Lina nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in her life, she felt a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. With Kalen by her side, she was no longer the rejected Omega. She was the Alpha King's Luna, and nothing could take that away from her. As they walked through the grand hall, Kalen's presence commanded respect, and Lina could feel the eyes of the pack upon them. Some were curious, others skeptical, but Lina stood tall, her head held high. She was no longer the shy, timid Omega who had been cast aside. She was something more, something powerful. And as the doors to the throne room opened before them, she stepped into her new life, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Lina entered the grand hall, the weight of her new life pressed heavily on her shoulders. She had always been an outsider, an Omega cast aside by her pack. But now, standing before Kalen's people, she was no longer invisible. She was his Luna, his chosen mate, and that came with a power she had never known before. The eyes of the pack were upon her, some filled with curiosity, others with skepticism, and yet, through it all, Lina stood tall. The past never truly left her, but for the first time, she could see a future unfolding before her, one she could shape for herself. Kalen stood by her side, his presence commanding and strong, his hand resting on the small of her back in a protective gesture. His touch, though gentle, was filled with power, reminding her that no matter what came, she would never have to face it alone. Lina, Kalen said, his voice low but steady. This is where we begin. The kingdom is in disarray. But with you by my side, we can rebuild what was lost. You are not just my mate. You are the key to our future. Lina looked up at him, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions she couldn't fully comprehend. How had she, the rejected Omega, become the key to the future of an entire kingdom? How could she, who had always been so weak in the eyes of others, now be seen as a symbol of strength? Kalen saw the uncertainty in her eyes, and he squeezed her hand reassuringly. You are more powerful than you think, he continued, his voice filled with conviction. You have the strength to lead, to inspire, and to heal. Together, we will show them that you are not just a healer of wounds, but a healer of souls. The words echoed in her mind, and for the first time, Lina began to believe them. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer the girl who had been cast aside. She was the Luna of the Alpha King, and her place here was earned, not given. As the day passed, Lina and Kalen met with the counselors, advisors, and elders of the kingdom. The atmosphere was tense, the room filled with whispers and sidelong glances as Kalen introduced Lina to the court. They all knew her as the rejected Omega, the one who had been cast out of her pack, and some of them questioned why Kalen would choose her as his mate. This is Lina, Kalen said, his voice commanding attention, and she is the future of this kingdom. Her heart is pure, and her power is undeniable. She will not only be my Luna, but the beacon of hope this kingdom needs." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone. Some looked at Lina with newfound respect, while others remained skeptical, unwilling to let go of their doubts. But Kalen was unwavering, his confidence in her shining through like a beacon. Lina could feel the tension in the air, but she also felt the power of Kalen's words. She was no longer just an outsider. She was his mate, his Luna, and that gave her a purpose greater than she had ever known. As the meeting came to a close, Kalen turned to her, a soft smile playing at the corners of his lips. "You did well," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You are exactly what we need." Lina felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words, a warmth that wasn't just from the praise, but from the realization that she was finally seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. The road ahead would be difficult, and there would be many challenges to face. But with Kalen by her side, she was ready to face whatever came. As they walked through the halls of the castle, Lina couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settle over her. She had found her place, not just as the Alpha King's mate, but as a leader, someone who could change the course of the kingdom's future. Kalen, sensing her calm, turned to her and spoke softly. "We will face many battles, Lina, but as long as we stand together, nothing will break us." Lina nodded, her heart filled with a newfound strength. She had never imagined that this would be her life, but now, with Kalen by her side, she knew that anything was possible. She was no longer the rejected Omega. She was the Luna of the Alpha King, and together, they would rebuild the kingdom and create a future where both of them could thrive. Days passed since Lina had been officially introduced as the Luna of the Alpha King, and with each passing moment, she began to understand the weight of the responsibilities that came with her new role. The castle, once filled with whispers and uncertainty, had slowly become a place where she could see herself making a difference. It was not easy, and every day presented new challenges, but Lina had Kalen by her side, and together they were starting to mend the broken pieces of the kingdom. The court, once divided and skeptical of her, began to warm to her presence. Kalen's unwavering belief in her had started to change the minds of those who doubted. She was no longer the rejected Omega. She was the Luna, the future of the kingdom. Kalen, always a man of few words, had begun to show more of himself to her, his vulnerabilities laid bare in the quiet moments when they were alone. He trusted her in ways he had never trusted anyone before. One evening, after a long day of meetings and decisions, that weighed heavily on both of them, Kalen led Lina to the balcony overlooking the kingdom. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the land. For the first time, Lina felt at peace. She had always dreamed of a life where she was valued, where she could be more than just the weak Omega. Now, standing beside Kalen, she felt like she had a place in this world. "Look at the land," Kalen said, his voice soft but filled with pride. "This is what we fight for. This is what we rebuild." Lina gazed out over the vast fields and mountains, the kingdom stretching far and wide. It was breathtaking, but it was also broken, a kingdom that needed healing, just like Kalen and herself. "We will rebuild it," Lina replied, her voice steady. "We will restore hope." Kalen turned to her, his eyes intense, filled with determination. "Together, we will." The words hung in the air between them, a promise, a vow. That night, as they stood together on the balcony, the moonlight bathing them in its silvery glow, Lina knew that the future was uncertain, but she also knew one thing. She would never face it alone. They were a team, bound by fate, and no matter the obstacles, they would overcome them together. The following weeks brought their fair share of challenges. There were those who still resisted Kalen's rule, and there were whispers in the corners of the court, doubts that refused to die. Some believed Lina was not fit to be Luna, that she was too weak, too inexperienced to lead. But Lina, for the first time, refused to back down. She had spent her life in the shadows, and now it was time to step into the light. She began attending more meetings, speaking with the people, listening to their concerns, and offering solutions. She found herself growing in confidence, her voice steady and sure. Kalen stood by her side, his support unwavering. But it was clear that Lina was beginning to find her own strength. The pack, the kingdom, began to notice her, not just as Kalen's mate, but as a leader in her own right. One day, as she sat with Kalen in the council chambers, discussing strategies for strengthening the kingdom's defenses, she felt a surge of pride. It had taken time, but she was no longer just the Omega who had been rejected. She was Lina, the Luna of the Alpha King, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Kalen looked at her, a proud smile crossing his face. "You're becoming everything I knew you could be," he said softly, his voice filled with admiration. Lina smiled back, her heart swelling with a mixture of love and gratitude. "And you're the one who believed in me first," she replied. "I couldn't have done it without you." Kalen reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We do this together, always," he said, his voice filled with quiet resolve. As the days turned into weeks, Lina's role as Luna became more and more integral to the kingdom's recovery. She worked alongside Kalen to restore peace and prosperity to the land, her influence growing with each decision she made. The people of the kingdom began to look to her for guidance, not just as the mate of the Alpha King, but as a leader in her own right. And as the kingdom began to heal, so did Lina and Kalen's bond. The curse that had once threatened to tear them apart was now nothing more than a distant memory, a shadow in the past. Together, they had overcome the darkness, and now they stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The kingdom was on the rise, and Lina was no longer just an outsider. She was a queen in her own right, destined to rule by Kalen's side, and together, they would rebuild the world they had once lost. As the months passed, Lina and Kalen's bond only grew stronger, the kingdom slowly healing from the wounds of the past. The land flourished once again, its people rallying behind the new leadership, and Lina stood at the heart of it all. She was no longer the Omega that had been discarded. She was the Luna, the symbol of strength and resilience. With each passing day, Lina proved herself more capable than anyone had ever imagined, including herself. Her instincts as a leader were sharp, and her ability to bring people together was unmatched. The court that had once whispered in doubt now respected her, and the kingdom, once divided, began to unite under her and Kalen's rule. Despite the progress, there were still moments when doubt crept into Lina's heart. She had never fully believed. She deserved this life, and some days, the weight of the crown felt almost too heavy to bear. But in those moments, she would look at Kalen, standing by her side with unwavering support, and she would find the strength to carry on. He had always believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. And now, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the vast kingdom they had rebuilt together, Lina felt a deep sense of peace wash over her. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the land, and she realized that this was her life now, a life she had forged with her own hands. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Kalen's voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to face him, a smile tugging at her lips. "Yes, we have," she replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "I never imagined this life, but now it feels like I've always belonged here." Kalen stepped closer, his presence a steadying force as he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You were always meant to be here, Lina," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Not as my mate, but as my equal. You are the heart of this kingdom, and together, we will make it stronger than ever before." Lina felt her heart swell with pride at his words. For the first time in her life, she truly felt like she had found her place, not just as the Alpha King's Luna, but as a leader in her own right. She had earned her position, and she would fight to protect it, and Kalen, for as long as she lived. As the seasons changed, so too did the challenges they faced. The kingdom was growing, and with growth came new threats. Rival packs, hungry for power, began to make their move, testing the strength of Kalen's rule. But Lina was no longer the fragile Omega who had once cowered in the shadows. She was the Luna, and she would not back down. She stood beside Kalen, facing the challenges head-on, her strength a reflection of everything they had built together. One evening, as a new threat loomed on the horizon, Kalen turned to Lina, his expression serious. "We will face this together," he said, his voice filled with resolve. Lina met his gaze, her own determination mirrored in his eyes. "Always," she replied, her voice steady and unwavering. The kingdom they had fought so hard to rebuild was now their greatest responsibility, and Lina would not let anything tear it apart. The battle that awaited them would be fierce, but they had already faced so much together. The kingdom was their home, and together, they would protect it at all costs. As the stars began to shine above them, Lina took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next. She was no longer the girl who had been rejected and cast aside. She was the Luna of the Alpha King, a force to be reckoned with, and she was ready to lead her people into a new era. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. As long as she had Kalen by her side, there was nothing they couldn't face. The days grew colder as the season shifted, and with it, the challenges that faced Kalen and Lina's kingdom began to take shape. The rival packs that had once watched from the shadows now made their move, testing the strength of the Alpha King's rule. It was no surprise. Power in the world of werewolves was always shifting, always fragile. But this time, it wasn't just Kalen they were threatening. It was everything they had built together. As the winds howled through the castle, Lina stood beside Kalen in the war room, her mind racing as she listened to the reports from the scouts. The threat was real, and it was growing. "They're planning an attack on the western border," one of the generals said, his voice grim. "They know we're vulnerable, and they're taking advantage of the opening we've left." Kalen's expression darkened, but his voice remained steady. "We'll reinforce the border, double the patrols, and fortify our positions." Lina looked around the room, meeting the eyes of Kalen's trusted advisors, some of whom were still hesitant about her role as Luna. But her position had solidified over time, and now, she was an integral part of the kingdom's strategy. "We'll need more than just reinforcements," Lina said, her voice calm but firm. "We need to send a message. We cannot afford to appear weak. If we wait, we lose the initiative. We must strike first." Kalen turned to her, a small but approving smile crossing his face. "You're right," he said. "We'll strike before they do. Prepare the forces." Lina's heart raced at the thought of leading an army, but she stood tall. She had been through so much already, had faced her own doubts and fears. She had become the Luna not just in name, but in strength. The kingdom was her responsibility now, and she would protect it with everything she had. The following days were filled with preparations. Kalen and Lina spent countless hours in the war room, planning the strategy that would protect their kingdom and send a message to their enemies. The tension in the air was palpable, but Lina felt more grounded than ever before. She knew that their victory wasn't just about defeating their enemies. It was about proving to the kingdom, and to themselves, that they were unshakable. The night before the battle, Lina stood at the edge of the castle's balcony, the cold wind whipping through her hair. Kalen joined her, his presence like a shield against the growing storm. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Lina turned to him, her heart filled with determination. "I've never been more ready," she replied. "We've fought for this kingdom together, Kalen. I won't let anyone take it from us." Kalen smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "I'm proud of you, Lina. You've proven to everyone, and to yourself, that you're the Luna I always knew you were." The next morning, they led their forces to the western border. The air was thick with anticipation, and the scent of battle hung in the air. As they approached the enemy's camp, Lina felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. There was no turning back. Kalen looked at her, his eyes locking with hers. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice steady. Lina nodded, her grip on her sword tightening. The battle that ensued was fierce, the clash of steel ringing through the air. But Lina fought with a ferocity she had never known, her instincts sharp and her movements fluid. She was no longer just a healer, no longer just the rejected Omega. She was the Luna of the Alpha King, and she fought for her kingdom, for her people, and for her future. As the battle drew to a close, the enemy forces began to retreat, their morale shattered by the strength and unity of Kalen and Lina's forces. The kingdom had won, but it was more than just a victory in battle. It was a victory for everything they had built together. The kingdom was strong, and its people were united. When the dust settled and the last of the enemy had been driven away, Kalen turned to Lina, his face filled with pride and gratitude. "We did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. Lina smiled, her heart soaring. "We did it together." The kingdom was theirs, stronger than ever before, and with Lina by his side, Kalen knew that nothing could ever tear them apart. The victory at the western border was more than just a military success. It marked a turning point for Kalen and Lina's rule. The kingdom, once fragile and divided, now stood united, its people emboldened by the strength and determination shown by their leaders. The whispers that had once questioned Lina's ability to lead faded into the background as the people saw her for who she truly was, a capable and fierce Luna, worthy of her position by Kalen's side. As the days passed, the kingdom began to rebuild in earnest. The crops that had once withered under the shadow of war began to flourish again. The markets were once again filled with bustling merchants, and the atmosphere in the castle was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. But even in the midst of this rebuilding, there were still challenges to face. Rival packs, though temporarily pushed back, would always be a threat in this world where power was everything. Yet, for the first time, Lina felt a deep sense of peace within herself. She no longer questioned her place beside Kalen. She had earned it, just as she had earned the respect of the people. She had become a leader, not just in name, but in action. And with every passing day, Kalen's confidence in her only grew stronger. They continued to face challenges together, but now they were more prepared, more united. One evening, as they stood in the war room, preparing for another round of discussions on the kingdom's future, Kalen turned to Lina with a proud smile. "You've proven yourself, Lina," he said, his voice full of admiration. "Not just to me, but to the entire kingdom. You're no longer the girl who was cast aside. You are the Luna of this kingdom, and together, we'll rule it with strength and wisdom." Lina's heart swelled at his words, the validation she had longed for now fully realized. But she knew that their work wasn't done. There would always be challenges, but as long as they faced them together, nothing could break them. The following months were filled with hard work and steady progress. The kingdom continued to grow, its people rallying behind Kalen and Lina, knowing that their leaders would protect them. But one day, as Lina was walking through the gardens of the castle, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A rival pack, one that had been biding its time, had begun to stir once more. They had gathered forces and were preparing to march toward the kingdom. The peace they had fought so hard to restore was once again in jeopardy. Kalen, as always, remained calm, but Lina could see the tension in his eyes. "This is it," he said, his voice steady but with an edge of concern. "We will face them head-on." Lina nodded, feeling the familiar surge of determination rise within her. This was their kingdom, their future, and she would protect it with every ounce of strength she had. The preparations for war began immediately, and once again, Kalen and Lina stood side by side, leading their forces with unshakable resolve. The night before the battle, Lina stood with Kalen on the balcony once more, the same view stretching before them. But this time the air was heavy with the weight of what was to come. "Are you ready for this?" Kalen asked, his voice soft but filled with the same strength Lina had come to rely on. Lina turned to him, her heart full of the love and trust she had for him. "I've never been more ready," she said, her voice steady. "We've fought for this kingdom together, and I will fight to the end to protect it." "To protect you." Kalen smiled, his hand reaching out to gently clasp hers. "And I will fight with you, Lina. Always." As the dawn broke the next morning, they led their army into battle once again. This time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. The kingdom they had built, the people they had fought for, were worth every sacrifice. The battle was fierce, but Kalen and Lina fought side by side, their strength and unity overwhelming their enemies. The rival pack, once so sure of their victory, was quickly driven back, their morale shattered by the indomitable spirit of Kalen and Lina. When the dust finally settled and the battlefield was quiet, Kalen turned to Lina, his face filled with both pride and relief. "We've done it again," he said softly. Lina smiled, her heart full of love and gratitude. "We did it together." The kingdom had won once more, and with each victory, Lina's belief in herself grew stronger. She was no longer just the Luna. She was a queen in her own right, and she would lead her people into an era of prosperity and peace. Together, Kalen and Lina had faced every challenge, and together, they would continue to build a future no one could tear down. The kingdom had begun to thrive once more. The air was filled with a sense of renewal, and the people, once scarred by uncertainty, now stood tall with pride, knowing that their rulers, Kalen and Lina, would always protect them. Lina, now fully embraced as the Luna of the Alpha King, had proven herself to be more than just the mate of a powerful ruler. She was the heart of the kingdom, the one who inspired not only the people but also Kalen. Together, they had weathered the storms of rebellion, war, and uncertainty. And now, peace seemed within their grasp. But Lina knew that the peace they had fought so hard for would not come without its challenges. The rival packs that had once sought to overthrow them were now quiet, their strength broken by the combined might of Kalen and Lina's forces. Yet, as they sat together one evening in the great hall, watching the sun set over the kingdom they had rebuilt, Lina couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. Kalen, sensing her unease, turned to her with a knowing look. "What's on your mind, Lina?" he asked, his voice soft but full of concern. Lina took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. I wonder what comes next. We've fought so hard to rebuild everything. What do we do now, when the fighting is over?" Kalen smiled, his hand reaching out to gently touch hers. "Now, we build the future. Together. You and I, we've already faced the hardest battles. But the real work begins now. We lead this kingdom into an era of peace and prosperity. We make sure that the people we protect today are taken care of for generations to come." His words soothed her, and she smiled, realizing that this was her destiny. Not just to be by his side, but to shape the future of the kingdom with him. "You're right," Lina said, her voice steady. "We've come this far. And now it's time to make sure that we don't just rebuild the kingdom's walls, but its soul." And with that, they began their next chapter. As the seasons passed, Kalen and Lina's rule brought about a time of great growth and prosperity. The kingdom flourished under their leadership, its people thriving in peace. They worked tirelessly to strengthen the bonds between their pack and neighboring territories, forging alliances and ensuring that the land remained united. Their love, once born out of necessity and circumstance, had grown into something deeper, something unbreakable. Kalen had always known that Lina was his fated mate, but now, after all they had been through, he realized that she was not just his other half. She was his partner in every sense of the word. Together, they were unstoppable. And Lina, who had once doubted her place in the world, now stood beside Kalen with the quiet confidence of a leader who had earned her position. She no longer questioned her worth, for she had proven herself time and time again, not only to Kalen and their people but to herself. She had come from nothing, from being the rejected Omega, to standing at the helm of the kingdom, shaping its future with her strength and wisdom. As they sat together on the balcony one evening, watching the stars shine brightly over their kingdom, Kalen turned to Lina and whispered, "You've made me the happiest man in the world, Lina. I never thought I could find someone as strong, as beautiful, and as capable as you. You are everything to me." Lina smiled, her heart swelling with love for him. "And you, Kalen, have shown me that I am capable of so much more than I ever dreamed. Together, we've created something extraordinary, and we'll continue to do so every day." As the years passed, the kingdom grew stronger, its people more united, and Lina and Kalen's love only deepened. They had faced trials and tribulations, but through it all, they had never wavered. They had proven that, together, they could overcome anything. The kingdom, once torn apart by strife, was now a beacon of hope, a place where peace and prosperity reigned. And Lina, the once rejected Omega, had become the heart and soul of the Alpha King's kingdom, a queen in every sense of the word. The future was theirs to shape, and with each passing day, they knew that as long as they had each other, nothing could ever tear them apart. Follow the captivating journey of Lina, a rejected Omega in a werewolf kingdom, who rises to become the powerful Luna beside the Alpha King, Kalen. As a werewolf, Lina has faced immense challenges, from being cast aside by her pack to discovering her true destiny as the Luna of the kingdom. With Kalen by her side, they face external threats and internal struggles, uniting their people and protecting their land from rival werewolf packs. Together, they overcome obstacles, from fierce battles to political strife, proving their unbreakable bond. Their love, once born from necessity, becomes a true partnership as they rebuild the kingdom and create a prosperous future. This werewolf tale shows the transformation of an Omega into a queen, one who earns her rightful place beside her powerful mate. As the kingdom grows stronger under their rule, Lina finds herself not only as the Luna, but as a leader who will shape the future of their werewolf kingdom. From being the weakest Omega to standing beside the Alpha King, Lina proves that love, loyalty, and strength can transform any werewolf's fate. Through unity and perseverance, the couple defies all odds, ensuring their kingdom thrives, proving that even a rejected werewolf can rise to greatness. The powerful story of Lina and Kalen's journey showcases the magic and power of the werewolf world, where destiny, love, and strength come together to create an unbreakable empire.